while you are experimenting with some of these pilots, and some may work out and some won't, most won't. So you believe that most of these that you're currently experimenting with won't?
I think if most work, then you're not aiming high enough. Because
when do you decide then to pull the plug on these experiments?
So they run at such a low cost that we are under no compulsion to reduce them. But every quarter we take a look back and see what's doing well, what are consumers telling us, is the thesis with which we set this up still strong? Then do you pivot it into something different based on the insight that you got, etc. Because even if you look at Swiggy Instamart, we created the category in India at a time when globally it was not supposed to be a breakout. And that also was an iteration. When we started with another business called Swiggy Stores, where we were delivering from neighborhood grocery stores, pharmacy stores, and we weren't able to give the experience that the consumers wanted. There were some consumers who kept coming back for more even for that experience. That forced us to iterate and invent on their behalf to see if there was a newer operating model that can solve this problem. So you really don't know where things take you when you start the pilot. Some are definitely worth shutting. Some are definitely worth advancing. The harder ones are whether you pivot into something else needs a lot more judgment, and yeah, it's not easy.
Well, no, I would imagine that it's not easy. But speaking of the road ahead and ways of being able to monetize the business, I mean, both Swiggy, Zomato, you've got a platform fee now. You've got a fee that you charge your restaurant partners as well, and you also have a regulatory headwind in the form of the government saying that, look, it's a service and you need to pay 18% GST. So both on the monetization aspect as well as the regulatory headwinds, how do you see both at this point in time?
I'll take the regulatory one first. We are a three-party marketplace connecting consumers, restaurants, and delivery partners. We've already shared our views with the GST Commission, and we'll see where that goes from here. Outside of that, I think there are always iterations. Like you mentioned, monetization, and these are all, I mean, still 3-6-month-old iterations. So we actually have had, I think these are experiments that will continue in pursuit of what works.
No, but I just want to go back to the GST issue, because you said that you have made representations to the GST authorities saying why you ought not to be taxed. What's the response been? Because so far they seem to believe quite emphatically that you need to pay.
Right. No, we don't have any new updates at this point.
Okay, no new updates that have come in from the GST authorities. But on both the the NRAI coming out and saying that this new restaurant collection fee is a distraction that is best avoided, how do you respond to that?
No, we work very closely with our partners and keep understanding what the pain points are, what we can do, and that's a continuous journey. In fact, our relationship with our restaurant partners at large is actually only gotten much better. We've been launching so many initiatives for partners. We're also doing a lot of outreaches, going to the cities, meeting partners in each city, getting feedback and getting better from there. So I would say that, this fee, that fee, there's always conversations with partners about potential win-win opportunities. So it's just...
Do they see this as a potential win-win?
There's always other things also that are going to be more beneficial. We've done some jumpstart programs. There's always incentives that we launch for partners, let's say in our India Next geographies where we've gone on many things. So
on the advertising revenue side, because that seems to be again a fairly decent chunk of money coming both Zomato as well as your way. What's the outlook on that front?
Well, I think if you look at overall in marketplaces in general and advertising, I think even Amazon's shown the way that there is a huge headroom. I think 7-8 years back, it was nowhere on the radar, and now it's a very meaningful part of the profit line item. So I think we also have made a lot of progress over the last 1-2 years. And I think there's still a lot more headroom in the next 2-3 years. But it will need tuning into partner needs a lot more and understanding segments, sub-segments, a lot of these that...
So what is the revenue contribution today, for instance, and where would you believe it could potentially be?
So I can't comment on the advertising business separately. There's overall economics that it is a part of. We don't classify it as a separate business, just a part of the food.
But it's proving to be significant?
100%. Have been seeing very strong growth in the last 1-2 years.
Okay, so let's talk about penetration from here on, given where you find yourself, given the traction that you see in the market. Where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years, for instance?
No, I think Shreen is operating in the top, I guess, close to 200 million consumers for the country. That's our target segment for most things that we do. With food delivery, we've seen meaningful penetration already, and a lot of the growth will not just be a function of more penetration, but also more occasions and use cases for the existing consumers to grow their business on the platform. But
Can you replicate the New Year Eve kind of moments? I mean, record sales
That's
coming
right.
in for you as well as for Zomato.
That's right.
Can we see occasions like that being replicated through the year? What do you do about that?
In fact, that's what we've been seeing in the last year. I think until 2023, Father's Day, Mother's Day weren't like massive occasions, but last time we were taken by surprise how much some of these are converting into real consumption occasions, whether it's for food delivery or for Instamart. So I think there's one, of course, festivals and how you think about tapping into festive events and offering a nice purpose-built consumption occasion for the consumer. But even outside of that, there can be occasions and needs outside of just festive events. You may want to gift something, you may want to order for someone else, you may want something more affordable, you may want something that is more tuned in for like a good snacking experience at evening. All of these are consumption occasions. So only the events are only one part of the consumption occasion.
But in terms of penetration or further penetration from here on, what are we talking about in terms of the headroom for growth, both on the Instamart side as well as the food delivery side? And do you believe on the food delivery side, we may start to see things slowing down given the pace of growth that we've already come off?
Well, it has slowed down already from previous highs, but I think it's expected to be there for at least the next 4 or 5 years. So it's not going to slow down further basis how we see it. I think it's also...
And you think the slowing down is only a function of the fact that you've addressed the current addressable market? And has there been a disconnect between what you thought the addressable market would be and what it's finally turned out to be?
I wouldn't say so.
No?
I wouldn't say so. We were always clear that this is for the top 150, 200 million consumers. I think there were some assumptions for how the retentions will play out. I don't think it's too different. But I think it's also very, very early. The very unique thing about India for food delivery is we're just so early for the restaurant industry in India. Like groceries, for example, 50 times the organized restaurant industry in India, unlike any other place in the world. But online food delivery happened in India at the same time as the rest of the world. So I think what that means is that we're not just growing online food delivery, but at some level also growing the restaurant industry a little bit because we just joined the wave so early. So the next 10, 20 years, I think as GDP per capita expands, discretionary income means the restaurant category is going to grow exponentially. So I'm very, very sanguine about it.
If that's the hypothesis, and I think that's the bet that everybody's making, that we are going to see this consumption boom take off, especially if we see a jump in per capita, what will that mean in the kinds of bets that you make for the future?
See, I think for all of our journey, we've only been betting on this wave, which is why I'm saying we won't go anywhere down market right now. Thinking about this 150, 200 million users today, if you play it out for a couple of decades, then it's going to be 400, 500 million users. So every year, new users come to the part of the pyramid that we operate in. And with any luck, every 2 years, out of the 10 things we put out, one new thing captures the consumer imagination at scale. And that's the simplified view of the Swiggy flywheel as we see it. So most of our effort is going after this consumer base and how we can do more for them within the realms of our mission around unparalleled convenience for urban consumers.
What's gotten easier in the journey, in this 10-year journey? You talked about, you gave us a picture of what happens at the front end as well as the back end. It's a complex operation.
100%.
What has gotten easier? What continues to be challenging?
No, I think preparing for change has been easier. Because once you go through a couple of cycles, the new time, then next time, I think the pandemic was a little unprecedented for us. I mean, as a company, for me as a founder, it was the first time there were so many things happening at scale. We were coming out of an investment calendar that was pretty large, and suddenly the business had come down by a lot. But coming out of it, I think it just built so much character for us and the company that new challenges seem easier than they did 5 years back. That's probably the biggest thing the challenges themselves are just as intense, but your preparedness for them is better.
Your ability to cope with them is better.
You start to believe that, okay, this too will pass. Instead of worrying about what all the things can go wrong, maybe we snap faster into, okay, how do we solve this?
But what are you most worried about today?
Most of the things I worry about are inward looking. How's the culture? Are we, tuning into the consumer? How does our talent look? What are the things that we can do to motivate more on the front line? All of these are mostly things that keep me
So
up.
what will drive the next decade for you? From a people perspective, from a tech perspective, from a penetration perspective, from a growth perspective, what will be the pillars of the growth strategy over the next 10 years?
No, I think for the next 10 years, again, tuning into the consumer, their needs, and giving them a better experience, and with any luck, finding new things that capture their imagination at scale. So that's literally what's going to ensure the growth flywheel. Is technology going to be a component? 100%. Is operations going to be a component? 100%. But I think we live and die by the consumers, so we hope to be on the right side.
What is the Indian consumer telling you today?
The Indian consumer is many types, so there's no one type. There's
consumer,
a section of the consumer who wants only convenience and are willing to pay for it. There are some consumers who are okay with a little less and would like it at a more affordable range, even in this top 150, 200 million consumers we're talking about. So, I mean, that's a cardinal sin to assume one Indian consumer archetype.
And there's many Indias as well.
100%. How people consume food delivery in the big cities is very different from how they consume it in the smaller cities. Becomes more recreational when you go to the smaller cities, but a lot more of a utility when in the big city.
Well, thanks very much, Harsha, for joining us here in Davos. We wish you the very best of luck, and we hope that we don't have to wait another 10 years or for Davos to happen to be able to speak to you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
We wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you.
Well, the conversations will continue here in Davos. We are going to take a break and return with plenty more. Stay tuned. We're back in a moment.